You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Hello again, everyone. This is Doug Thorpe, and you're listening to another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Today, we're going to have a fun and exciting topic. My guest is a fellow military veteran and someone who has now made a career of helping corporate leaders understand significant differences between military leadership and corporate leadership. She's got some great and interesting ideas. Her name is Isabelle Fortin, and Isabelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a blast.
So I was rereading your bio just to remind myself. So you spent some time in the Canadian military, right?
I sure did. A little short of a decade, but I usually tell people I did a decade because it sounds better.
Yeah. Understand.
Yeah.
And it was the Air Force?
Yeah, Air Force. I joined in 1989. It was it was kind of a scene out of a movie because I left my graduation party wearing an evening gown and I jumped into the bus, still half drunk, wearing my evening gown, bringing me to boot camp.
Oh my goodness. And how were you received at boot camp?
I changed in the bus.
Okay.
Yep. I changed on the bus. I evidently fell asleep somewhere I shouldn't have been and wearing something I shouldn't be wearing to bed, and woke up in the nick of time and just, ran to the bus, and there I was. But the bus wasn't the military bus, so it was a regular bus bringing me to
bringing you to the camp. Okay, so you had a different presentation when you showed up. So
when I showed up, I was wearing, I still reek of alcohol, but I was wearing regular clothes to show up at boot camp. Yeah. So
yeah, there you go.
I was, oh my God, a long time ago now.
Yeah. I understand. Well, I didn't have quite as colorful an induction. I took a long journey to go into the military. I went through here in the States. We have what we call Reserve Officer Training Corps, ROTC, and I did that in high school and college. So I had a 7-year ramp up to go in, and of course through all of that, I was going to various training camps and exercises and exposure to things. So I at a different entry point, but nonetheless, it was still a eye opener on day one, when you get there.
Being in the military, I understand why obligation to serve our country, of course, still exists in many nations in the world. In Canada, it hasn't existed in a long time. However, about 5-6 years ago now, maybe even a little bit more than that, we got, like the first week of March, we got the biggest snow dump. It fell like 8 inches in the first hour and continued to snow throughout the entire evening. I lived 1 mile from my work, and it took me an hour to get to my house. And when I got to the house, I couldn't park the car. So I ended up driving back to, between my work and my house was shopping center. And I ended up just leaving my car there with a sign inside my car saying, "This is my name. This is my phone number. If there's a problem, please don't tow my car. Just call me." And people were leaving cars everywhere. So all of that, to come back to the original story, there was a few people throughout the province that actually died from poisoning, from
car exhaust.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And died. And I remember talking to a client of mine who was also a veteran, and he said, if military service was mandatory, that wouldn't have never happened. They wouldn't have died because they would have had the skills and the know-how to, well, what do you do when you get stuck and you're, your pipe out of your car, your exhaust pipe out of your car is shoveled in snow. And how do you get, fresh air and keep your warmth and then all that good stuff? So, like, I understand that people don't necessarily want to serve, but military gives humans skills they don't learn anywhere else.
Right. Right.
So,
Well, and to your point, it's also, every form of training that I'm familiar with in military around the globe, there's a kind of training that proves to you just on a very personal level, you can do more than you ever thought you could,
yes,
physically and mentally.
absolutely.
And there's exercises and there's camps and there's drills and there's things that prove that to you so that you have this amazing aha moment and you say, damn, I'm pretty special. and
Yeah.
and I think that's a very unique insight. And at the time you're doing it, you might be scared to death. And um, not to digress or get off topic too fast, but I'll never forget in one of my basic training camps. We had a day in the water obstacles, and one of the challenges was you climb this 40-foot telephone pole. I mean, it had rungs on it, so it was like a ladder kind of thing. But you climbed up, you got on that, and then you walked across a board that was 12 inches wide, and you got to the middle, and there was a box that was 12 inches tall. You had to step up on the box, stand there a minute, and then step down again and walk to the other end of the plank. And this is all 40 feet above water. And,
How deep was the water?
oh, it was deep enough to fall in without hurting yourself, but and at the end of all that, there was a rope, and you had to do the crawl, hook on the rope, flip your legs over, and crawl out and touch this sign. And then you got to drop and more formally drop into the water as a release. But there was one of my colleagues that was, he got up on that box and froze. And, would not move. They, of course, all the TAC officers were yelling at him and screaming at him and, you better move, you better move, you better move. And it just so happened that, that we heard this sound of a helicopter coming up over the hill, and it was the base commander, the general that was responsible for the training base. He was just touring, and he landed his chopper and walked over where we were and saw this all going on. And we all heard him say to the cadre, pointed at the guy stuck on the box, when he gets down, he's out, and sure enough, by the time we got back to the barracks that night, he was gone. All his stuff was packed, his locker was cleared out, and he was gone,
Well, the problem with that is that the problem with situations like that and freezing in a moment like that is that eventually, in situations of war, you're going to put somebody else's life in danger.
Yeah.
And that's why he had to be out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so funny because I recorded a podcast not too long ago, and the gentleman that was hosting the podcast said, because we had had a few conversations together, and he said, how can you say command and control doesn't work when you served 10 years in the military? I said, well, because in the military, it seems like it's command and control, but its mission comes first. So if the rookie comes in and he's naturally extremely gifted at doing that task, he's going to get that task because it's mission first. So who can do the job, the best job possible in the least amount of time possible and serve the mission best? If that's the rookie on the team, then the rookie gets the job. Of course, you're not talking about team management or whatever. You're talking about accomplishing tasks. I said, so it looks, and there are certain situations where command and control is absolutely the way that it works in the military. And in civilian life, there are actually absolutely moments where command and control should be the way it's done. The building's on fire. It's not time to ask anybody how the fuck they feel about it. It's time to say, you do this, you do that, you get the fuck out. So, but what the military does extremely well that corporate America doesn't do well. And I talk about corporate America because I haven't worked in Europe or anywhere else in the world. So the North American way of doing business, Canadians are very similar to the US, although we are not the 51st state. Uh,
Not yet.
oh, yeah. Well, good luck with that. There's
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
lot of logos being printed on shirts saying Canada's not for sale. But anyway, that's all joking aside. Um, there's two things that differs a lot from the military to corporate America. The first one is the lack of leadership training, because in the military, every leader gets leadership training because leadership is a skill. And the other thing is the mission comes first. So when you're the rookie and you're being called to doing the job that normally the master corporal or even the sergeant would do, of course, not as a leader, but just as being the person that does the job, because you are naturally good at doing that thing, well, you feel seen, heard, and valued because your unique abilities are being brought to the team for a common goal. So you feel that way because you are all these things, because you know exactly what it is that you bring to the table that nobody else does. So whenever I do a conference or a workshop with the teams that I work with, I always say, what's the mission? What are we trying to accomplish? Because if you're doing a job or doing a task, I'll say a task, you're doing a task, you've been doing it for years, and somebody else shows up and they're better at it than you, and they're doing it more efficiently and way faster. Well, shouldn't we just tap into your unique abilities? Because you have things you bring to the table nobody else does. So when everybody does that, and that's the job of the leader to find out these things, right? So when everybody does that, well, everybody know exactly what it is and how they contribute. And, Doug, I've been doing this for quite some time. And every single person I've ever worked with, leader or team member, they all want to contribute to the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
And they lose engagement to their job or the company they work for when they don't know what it is that they bring to the table. I recently worked with a team leader and he said they're fighting. There was a lot of infighting in the team. And he said they're fighting for power. I said, no, they're fighting for recognition. They want to know, what is it about them in particular on an individual basis? What is it about them that helps the team? And as soon as they know what that is, watch out, because the sky's going to be the limit. Profitability increase, productivity increase, engagement increase, turnover decreases by a lot. It's unbelievable. But people, I understand why it is still to this day command and control, because it's way easier on the leader.
Right. Well, it sounds like you and I share a lot of common ground. I too, I've gone on record as saying for most modern business, command and control needs to be dead. It's a mindset that has no place in our modern world. But at the same time, I agree with you. There are definitely exceptions. And the analogy I use, if I'm going to need open heart surgery, I want my surgeon to dominate that room.
Yeah,
I want him to tell everybody what their next move is. And I don't want anybody being creative and empowered and all that stuff.
absolutely. It's so funny because I owned a horse for a long time, and his name was Otello. He's passed now. He was 32 when he died. But Otello was 17 hands and he weighed 1,800 pounds. When I walked into the box, if I didn't know I was in charge, like in every cell of my being, if I didn't know for myself that I was in charge, he would take over.
Mm-hmm.
I weigh 160 pounds butt naked. What chances did I have? Right? So it's the same thing when you say, if you have to have open heart surgery, the surgeon is in charge, and it has to be that way. That doesn't mean he needs to be, screaming and kicking and swearing at anybody. It just means there has to be no room for doubt that the person in charge is him.
Right. Right. Well, I have worked with organizations where their legacy as a company goes back decades and sometimes centuries in a very rigorous command and control kind of thing. And they partially justify continuing that by saying, well, that's what got us here. That's why we are what we are now. But the reality is, as you work with a company like that, what you hear people saying is, I never really respected my old boss because the way he made me feel. And yet I believe in the work. I got the work done, but I never really respected. And yet when that individual gets promoted into that role of leadership, they adopt that same heavy-handed persona. And I tell the story of one executive I was working with that I challenged him on that. I said, where does that come from? And he said, well, that's the way the guys before me in this seat always operated. I said, well, how did that make you feel? And he said, I hated it. I hated every moment of those dark moments we had to have. I said, well, you are now that guy. Don't you think you can do it differently if you really wanted to? And we spent most of our coaching time talking about that. And he agreed. He said, no, it doesn't have to be that way. And I tell the story that after about 3 months of working with this guy, I got a phone call one day from their head of HR, and they said, what have you done with so-and-so? And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, we are getting glowing remarks from the field about the change that has come over him, and people are more engaged, they're more excited, they're more productive. And they're actually learning, even though they're already senior leaders in our business, now they're learning even more about next steps. And I said, woohoo, very good. It's working. So, I always go back to that story as kind of proof it can be done differently.
Absolutely. And what gets you here won't get you there.
Right. And even you going back to the military analogy, some of the best leaders I worked for in the military, there was no question because of the shape of the brass on their collar, you knew they were the boss. It was they had positional authority, but they never ever exercised that power. They exercise the power of bringing you in, saying, you have a job. I respect what you can do for us. Here's the mission. Here's what we need to do. Let's go get it done.
Absolutely. One of the best bosses that I had when I was in the military, I was a private. Oh, at the ripe age of 17, I wasn't even legal to drink. And he was a major in his early 50s then. And he would walk in my office. I had an office, and he would walk in my office and sit and wait. And I would say, good morning, sir. How you doing today? I'm doing fine. You? Yes, sir. Anything I can do for you today, sir? Nope. And he would sit there. Because most humans hate silence, especially when you're the rookie of any organization, like the entry level at any jobs, and that you're in front of the big chief. Because he was the deputy commanding officer of my squadron. And he would wait. And since all humans hate silence, I would eventually talk. Out of nervousness, out of, just wanting to fill the void, out of, removing what I felt was tension. There was no tension there. He was waiting. He was creating that space on purpose for me to talk. And he did that with me, and he did that with every other people in every department. He says, if I want to know what's going on in the squadron, I don't ask my direct reports. I ask the people at the bottom of the food chain. Because when my direct reports take decisions, they don't check if it's good for the little guy. And I hate that term, but I'll use it just for a lack of a better one. He said, but these people, the one doing the entry level jobs, they know they are the one that possess the information if whatever decisions we took is working or not, because they are living with the consequences. So he would make everybody uncomfortable. And I've gotten to know him quite a bit, and I became very friendly with him and his wife. And he would say, I didn't want to ask my captains. They wouldn't have, they took the decision. They weren't going to tell me the truth. But you guys told me the truth. And the best way to create that was just sit there in silence. And it worked.
It is interesting, and I would have to agree that I think probably in terms of a spectrum of leader personality, I got a wider spectrum in my own military experience than I have in the corporate realm, because there's probably only a few stereotypes that I've run into in my corporate life, but in the military, they were kind of all over the board. I had one colonel that I was working for. I was a young lieutenant, and I was getting promoted from second lieutenant to first lieutenant. And he came to the ceremony to do the officiating of it and award, give me my brass and do the pinning on the collar and all that stuff. And we were having a kind of a reception line of sorts was the protocol. And he went through the line and came up to me and he shook my hand. He goes, well, congratulations. He said, now your game is over. And I said, excuse me, sir, what are you talking about? And he said, someone somewhere taught you something, and I have watched you for the last 2 years. I totally appreciate what you were taught, but I'm telling you that it's official now. The game is over. I said, sir, I'm not sure I know what you're talking about. And he said, yes, you do. And he said, somebody told you that nobody expects anything from a second lieutenant. You guys are scum of the earth. You have no real responsibility. Anything you do is never going to be held against you. And he said, smart ones take advantage of that and use the system. And he said, I've watched you. I believe you're a master of using the system. He said, it's over. You can't do that anymore.
That's very funny.
I said, no, sir, I really don't know what you're talking about. He goes, damn it, I told you you're doing it again. You got to stop that.
Yeah, that's very funny.
So then I grinned and I nodded and I said, yes, sir, I understand. And that was the end of it, But the reality is I had actually been told that. I had a mentor who was before I got commissioned, he was a mentor to me. He was a retired colonel, and he told me that. He said his words to me was, he did agree nobody expects anything out of a second lieutenant, so you've got that in your favor. He said, but here's what I'm going to tell you to do. And these were his words, literally. He said, get in there. You got a 2-year window that you're going to be at that rank. He said, work hard, do your best, do the right thing. He said, but pick your battle, find something and really screw it up. And I said, excuse me? And he said, I promise you. He said, screw something up. And he said, no, we don't want to get anybody killed or anything, but just, there'll be something you can really screw up. Then they're going to come look at your record and they're going to go, oh, this guy's pretty good. Let's pay attention.
That's a good way to be seen.
And I didn't quite take that part of his advice that far, but I did have my moments when I definitely found ways to take full advantage of the system as best I could at the time. But my wife still teases me. We have a joke in our family about you can get anything if you have a clipboard and a pickup truck.
Yeah, that's so.
And,
that is so true. Just look like you belong, and the people aren't going to question you.
Nope. You just, get out of your truck, flip open the clipboard, check off some stuff, go pick up some boxes or equipment or whatever you need and load it on the truck and drive away. Nobody's going to ask a question.
When I come from a military family, and when I joined, my brother was an Air Force pilot. He's retired now, but he does air show, just, 'cause why not? And a few years ago, listen, my brother got his wings. I was 12. So he's been a pilot like for 41 years of my life. So he was doing an air show 20-minute drive from my house. And in the 41 years that he's been a pilot and that I have been his sister, well, I've been his sister for longer than that, but I had never seen him in an air show. I had been in the airplane just, when he's doing loops and stuff like that, but never at an air show. So he says, well, come, this weekend, I'll leave the tickets at the front door and whatever. He says, but, unfortunately, I'm out of VIP tickets. So you're just going to have to. I said, no problem. So I went over, and parking lot is full. Other parking lot is full. Parking lot, a 20-minute drive with a shuttle bus is full. Everything is full. I said, nope, not happening. So I drove to the exact building where people were lining up and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting to get in by foot. And I drove up there. So first police officer said, you VIP? Yeah. Okay, just walk on through, drive on through. Okay, I get to the gate. And the guy said, he said, you can't park here. I said, I'm sorry. I said, I'm a family member of one of the pilots. I was told I could. He said, okay, so what's your name? I said, my name is Isabelle Fortin. Okay, so what's your brother's name? My brother's name is Dan Fortin. So he takes who the pilots are, and he says, Dan Fortin. But in Quebec, when we get married, we don't change our last names. But he wasn't from Quebec. The guy at the gate is not from Quebec. So he thinks I'm his wife. I didn't correct him. I just said, he said, okay, I see Dan Fortin. Okay, go ahead, ma'am. He said, I'll have someone escort you inside. Okay. So some security guard comes, escort me inside, walks by everybody. There was an hour wait to get on site, and now walked past everybody, and he literally parked me in the VIP tent. But you know what? I walked there like I belonged.
Yeah.
And so nobody questioned that I belonged.
Right.
And once I went to the VIP tent, everybody had recognized me. So now I could go back and, hey, Isabelle, because I always introduce myself to everybody. Hey, Isabelle, nice to see you again. I spent the entire weekend on that lot.
That's great. Well, talk to me about the work you do with corporate folk. I know you try to point out that discrepancy between, why the military works one way and corporate works another, and where the opportunities are. Elaborate on all that for us.
Well, the first thing that I do is take the pulse of the team. So if I want to help a leader, I have to figure out what his or hers blind spots are. And the best way is to do what the major did when I was a private, is to walk into a place and, shush. So I have every team member fill out a questionnaire about their boss, and it's anonymous. So I don't know who said that. I don't know who said what. But if I'm working with a group of 20 people and 18 people said the same thing, more than likely it's true, and it's not a conflict of personality. So the second thing that I do is I have everybody, and the leader comes first. I know leaders are supposed to eat last, but in this particular case, I have the leaders do it first. And I have every single team member fill out it's called the NOVA profile. It's a psychometric assessment. So it's not a personality test. It really isn't. It's science-based. It's a cognitive, behavioral, motivational, and core values assessment. So it's a questionnaire that takes about 20 minutes to fill out. And out of that, I get a between 25 to 40 pages report. And it's my job to look at the report and see, how is this person's brain wired? Because some people are extremely task oriented and some people are extremely relational oriented or relation oriented. And some people need challenges. And if their jobs or their lives don't have enough challenges, they're going to create some. And that's when they get into trouble. And how do they learn? Because some people are interested in absolutely everything, and some people are only interested in learning in the topics that interests them. So once I do the assessment of everybody and I do the debrief of everyone, then depending on what I was hired for, when I start doing the coaching of the leader, the first thing that we do is that we sit down and we look at everybody's report. We don't look at the 40 pages for every single person because, that's why they pay me the big bucks. It's so that I can help the leader here. Listen, this is how you should communicate this person. This is how much leeway they need, how little leeway they need, because somebody does require the hand holding. How do you speak? How do you best communicate with this person? And it's absolutely what to avoid. And then again, depending on what I was hired for, but that's what I love the most. I love it all, but what I love the most is when I get to work with everybody as a group. Because then what we get to do together is come up with a way that we're going to communicate when things don't go well, when we don't get our way. Because it isn't the right time to figure out how you're going to talk to somebody with compassion, with empathy, with adaptability when you're mad at them. This isn't the right time. You need to have the strategies in place before. So I call that my prenuptial agreement. Because listen, we all have extremely high stressful job for the most part. It's all, people go into their office and go all day long. And then they bring that back to the dinner table. And that what makes me sad is when an employer, a team leader, or any leader of any level gets to tap into the unique abilities of everybody. Like I was saying earlier, when they know how they are contributing to the team, of course it increases, everything that I mentioned before, engagement, it decreases turnover, and turnover is extremely costly. It increases engagement. I said that, productivity and profitability, but it has a ripple effect on their daily lives. If you had, a bad day at the office one day, well, that's not the end of the world. But if all of your 40, 45, 50 hours you spend in a week, which is the most time you spend awake, is with your colleagues, your coworkers, and it's all crap, well, how are you showing up at the dinner table? So how kind or empathic are you with your own kids and with your spouse and with your parents and with your anybody? And how are you showing up in your community? So it starts with the leader. It starts with the leader. When you know what you're contributing, when you're allowed to be who you are and do the things that you are good at, you feel valued, you come home, there's still energy to love on the people that you actually care about. And that has a ripple effect into their lives and who they spend their time with, right? So that's how we create better teams, but that's how we create better communities. It's truly one person at a time. So that's pretty much what I do, and I absolutely love it.
I think that's great. And
Thank you.
I happen to, relate to all of that you said. It is, popularly thought, and I know a lot's been written of late in the leadership development realm about a so-called humanistic approach to leadership, and that is start with taking a look at the people around you and recognizing the value that they bring as not just employees or workers, but as human beings, fellow human beings. And the notion of being empathetic and sensitive to where they are, and you've said it a couple of ways, but I call it, finding their zone of genius, their
Yes,
opportunity to really excel at what they do, what they
absolutely.
can bring. Because guess what? When you're able to task out work to an individual who is excited about doing that work, the pile that you put on them is not going to seem like such a pile because they just love it. They're going to just plow through that.
Absolutely.
Conversely, you pile something on somebody that has no desire to do that kind of work. Well, number one, obviously, you got to question the placement of that individual on your team. Are they the right person in the right seat? But if they're still appropriate for the team, but you haven't given them the alignment for the work that is a best fit for them, it's going to be a struggle. Now,
Absolutely.
in times of crisis, times of urgency, deadlines looming and all that, yeah, everybody's going to have to carry the load a little bit one way or the other. And, in my wife and I were talking about this the other day recently. Her dad was a U.S. Army veteran who served in World War II, and he was at the
Mm,
Battle of the Bulge. And when the shells start coming in, everybody digs a foxhole,
yes, including the Colonel.
including the general. Everybody's
Yes,
digging a hole,
absolutely.
and there is no order of rank or anything at that point. But
It's survival.
it is survival, and it is meeting the need in the moment. So modern work can be that way at times.
Mhm.
That everybody needs to pick up the shovel and do some of the heavy lifting to get it done. But that
Absolutely.
doesn't have to be your norm. You can try to leverage that primary skill and ability and aptitude. But I like what you said. It's incumbent on the leader to figure that out.
Yeah, there was a report, I think it was the McKinsey, that said that we're able to have statistics on the fact that leaders and managers have more impact on people's health that their family doctor have, which is crazy, but I can see why. And that's one of the things that I do when I do the debrief with the leaders and I go through their entire team leaders, not team leaders, but team member, is the task distribution. Because if somebody is extremely data oriented, why are they not doing all the reports instead of pissing everybody else?
Right.
Pissing
Right.
them off. And they like it. They can't get enough of it. They like it. They're efficient at it. They're good at it. They want to do it. And we're human. We're all better at doing things we like to do. So, and it becomes a vicious circle in a positive way. If I'm good at it and I do it often, I get better at it, and then just I get more and more and more efficient, and everybody wins. And the other thing is when I have the team come together, I revise what the test reveals, and I have them kind of guess. Okay, so who has the more cognitive, preference, or who has whatever it is. And it tells me how much or how little they know one another. But the other thing that it does is, and I have nothing, absolutely nothing against team building exercises. And there are some that are extremely efficient. But I'm going to give you an extremely bad example. If the team leader spends or the company spends 5,000 on a rock climbing day and whatever, okay, so the very physically fit And up to the challenge ones are very happy, and all you did is piss off everybody else on the team. But they're supposed to be building a team together. So when I work with a team and we come together and we go through the exercise, okay, so this is what a high cognitive looks like. So I'm going to slowly give them tips. So, okay, so this person, how do you think you should, if you want something out of this person, how do you think you should address this person? And now, not only are they learning to know more about one another, but they are also learning together how to deal with one another. And what that creates, Doug, is that I don't need to share the love of pickleball with you for me to actually get along with you. Right? And there's a lot of coaches, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just bringing it way broader than that. A lot of coaches focus on, okay, but find common grounds. Well, you're both humans. You're both walking this planet, and you're both doing the best that you can with what you have. And that should be enough. So when you bring back the humanity of every single individual, people go, oh, okay. Well, I didn't know I didn't know she was battling cancer. And all of a sudden, there's a moment in the eyes you can see is the compassion comes back. And I want to take 4 seconds and come back to empathy. Doug, empathy increases profitability by 86%. And that's not a number I drew out of a hat. It is now the science is looking at these so-called soft skills, which between you and I, there's nothing soft about them. And seeing that when they are applied in the workplace, they increase everything that we want out of a company. So why wouldn't we use them?
Right.
Is it easy for the leader? Geez, no, it's not. But it's way better, and you get the most out of everybody, and that gets to be fun too. It's not only work.
I agree. Well, one more point you alluded to earlier that I want to touch on before we need to go, and that is, the contrast between military and civilian work. Leadership development, you talked about in the military, leadership is a constant and ever-present learning, whereas in modern business, maybe not so much. Some companies are a little more enlightened and a little further ahead than others, but I talk about this all the time, and I run into it daily with my own client base, and that is, people get put on the management track because they're a great contributor. They've been recognized for their sole contribution. They're the brightest bulb in the string, the best engineer, the best accountant, whatever. Yes. And they get asked to be the team leader, and next thing you know, poof, now somebody's on a management leadership track. And responsibilities grow, team sizes grow. And in too many cases, it's only after the third, fourth, and sometimes fifth promotion that the company says, I ought to send you to leadership training. That might be a good idea.
And the damage is done.
And the damage is already done. They've already been through 2 or 3, maybe 4 iterations of some part of the organization that didn't get the benefit of the training they're now going to get.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's extremely sad. See, when I was in the military, 100% of the leaders got leadership training because you could not be promoted without it. You couldn't. It was impossible. So it was the necessary step in order to get to that level, in order to get the promotion. And you're right. In corporate America, it's, you're the best salesperson, so we're going to put you in charge of the sales department. Well, selling is a skill and leadership is another one. And the other thing that I find corporate America that does something extremely wrong is most people will accept the the management role or the leadership role just because it comes with more money. And why wouldn't they want to make more money? However, that it's an extremely, I understand why leaders should be paid a little bit more. I get that. I'm not against that. But there should be another way. Because if the only reason, and I mean, why wouldn't you want more money? So you're going to accept the job. Even if you suck at it, you're going to accept the job because it's giving you personal freedom. But the impact that you have on others is not taken into consideration. So unfortunately, I have no the big solution to remedy that. I truly don't. And I wish I did. I more than likely would be a billionaire if I had the solution to that problem. But not everybody wants to be a leader. And not everybody should.
Right. That's right. Well, I'll tell you what, I think we're about up on time for today. Thank you so much for doing this. I know we kind of just dove in and got after it,
That's okay.
But that's all great. So tell people, Isabelle, the best way to get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more about your work.
There are two ways. The first one is my website. So the name of the company is Against the Ordinary. So it's againsttheordinary.org. And you want to take an appointment with me there at the bottom there's a link to discovery call. And if not, my hangout place is LinkedIn. And so it's Isabelle Fortin. I'm sure you're going to put the exact name in the show notes. And there are a lot of us. Take the one with the purple hair and you can't go wrong.
There you go. Well, perfect. And you're absolutely correct. As always, folks, we're going to put those links in the show notes as we always do. And this is the part of the show where I like to tell you that we do have a video version of this. If you've been listening on your favorite streaming service, we are on video and you got to see the purple hair. It's important and the background that goes with. But it's over on YouTube, channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Got me way off my game. I'm sorry.
Okay.
This has been a blast. I've enjoyed this. A little bit of reminiscing, a little bit of strategizing. And anyway, I'm pull up, Doug. Pull up. We're gonna.
You're doing fine, Doug. Don't worry about it.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, everybody knows me, so it's fine. But anyway, we're gonna bring this to a close, and I'm gonna tell you, as always, go out there and make it a great.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.